In 2005, Steve Jobs shocked the world with a confession that he was adopted. Born to a Syrian father named Abdul Fattah and an American woman named Joanne, Jobs was given up for adoption shortly after his birth. Joanne's father was outraged that she had a child with an Islamic man, leading to the decision to give the baby away. Joanne and Abdul Fattah set a requirement that the adoptive parents must both have college degrees, a difficult task at the time. Unlike today, it was very rare to see both parents having a degree, let alone a single parent with a degree. But Joanne insisted on this requirement. She wanted to make sure Steve was seen to be well educated. After weeks of waiting, a couple finally stepped forward to adopt Steve. As the adoption process almost came to a close, the couple revealed they didn't meet the requirement of having a degree. Just as Joanne was about to rescind the adoption notice, the couple begged and promised to send Steve to college. They even offered to write a memorandum to keep their promise. Seeing their earnest efforts, Joanna decided they were the right parents for Steve. However, fate took a twisted turn when Joanne's father passed away just 2 weeks later. Although a big grief for the family, without the disapproving father, Joanne's mother gave her blessing for Joanne to marry Abdul Fattah. And of course, the couple scurried to find Steve to have him back. They were unable to track him down. Steve Jobs was a troublesome child for Paul and Clara Jobs. He was always getting into mischief and causing trouble for his parents. One time, he nearly electrocuted himself by sticking a silverware into an electric plug. Another time, he thought it would be funny to set off fireworks under his teacher's chair, which resulted in his parents being called to the school. His parents were at their wits' end trying to figure out how to handle their mischievous son. They knew he had a brilliant mind, but they needed to find a way to channel his energy and curiosity in a more productive direction. That's when his father came up with an idea. He decided to give Steve piles of old electronics to tinker with. He encouraged him to take things apart, figure out how they worked, and put them back together again. It was a way to keep Steve out of trouble while also nurturing his interest in electronics. Steve took to the challenge with gusto. He spent hours in his room, surrounded by wires, circuit boards, and tools. He was determined to understand how everything worked and to push the boundaries of what was possible. One day, while working on a project to build a decibel meter, Steve realized he was missing a crucial component. He searched through his piles of electronics but couldn't find what he needed. That's when he had a bold idea. He looked through yellow pages, gave a call to Bill Hewlett, the founder of Hewlett-Packard. On the call, Steve asked Bill if he could get a component so that he may finish his work with the radiator. Bill was absolutely thrilled, and even gave him an internship opportunity at HP. From that moment on, Steve threw himself into his work with even more determination. He spent every spare moment tinkering with electronics, building new gadgets, and dreaming up revolutionary ideas. He was on a mission to change the world with his inventions. Later, Steve would look back and say the garage was my own heaven. Steve Jobs' parents were not financially stable, and usually lived paycheck to paycheck. However, to keep the promise of sending Steve to a university during adoption, they saved up little by little and finally were able to save up enough to send Steve to university. Grateful but not wanting to put more financial burden on his parents, he did everything to save money. He walked 7 miles to go to a Buddhist temple for free food during weekends. He even collected glass bottles for 5 cents. In the end, he dropped out of his school to stop the financial burden on his parents. As he was tinkering and strolling around the town with his friend, he meets his legendary partner, Steve Wozniak, a genius engineer who's 5 years older than Jobs. As they got along, Wozniak showed Jobs a game he created, a variation of Pong. Absolutely shocked, Steve took the game to Atari and showed the Wozniak's game. Jobs told them that it's actually a game he himself created, and Atari hired him on the spot. Jobs' first assignment was to lead the creation of a brand new game, and Jobs bombasted that he can get it done in 4 days. And he sprinted to Wozniak for another game. Wozniak was stunned and refused at first, but eventually gave in and completed the game that's well beknownst to us all, Breakout. The game was a great hit, and Atari was so impressed that they paid Jobs extra $5,000. At the time, $5,000 was equivalent to roughly more than $30,000. As a side note, Jobs actually lied to Wozniak that he only got $700 as payout, which Wozniak later found out. Wozniak forgave Jobs because Jobs invested all the money to their startup company, Apple.